Your brain makes up about 2% of your body weight, but it burns close to 20% of your energy every single day. That makes it the most expensive organ you own. For most of human history, food wasn't guaranteed. Calories were hard to come by, and wasting them on unnecessary effort was risky. So your brain learned to be careful with energy long before you were born. Researchers call this the cognitive miser, a mind built to take the cheapest mental route it can find, not because it's lazy, because it's trying to keep you alive. To your brain, comfort isn't really about pleasure. It's about saving energy. And progress? Progress asks for the kind of expensive thinking your brain would rather avoid. Psychologist Daniel Kahneman described two ways your mind works. One is fast and automatic. It barely takes any effort at all. The other is slow and deliberate, and your brain only turns it on when it has to. Learning something new, breaking a habit, or facing the unknown all call for that slower, effortful thinking, which is exactly why your mind tends to push back. It's not resistance to you. It's resistance to spending energy. So long before you consciously decide to stay comfortable, your brain has already made the choice, quietly, on a budget you never even see. Deep inside your brain, there's a system built to keep everything stable. Psychologists call it homeostasis, your body's quiet obsession with balance. Physiologist Walter Cannon first described it in the 1920s. He was talking about temperature and blood sugar. But that same instinct shows up in your behavior too. Your nervous system treats your current life, however average it feels, as the normal setting. Anything that pulls you away from it gets treated like a problem to fix. That's why trying something new can feel physically uncomfortable, a little restless, a little anxious, even when what you're trying is genuinely good for you. Researchers William Samuelson and Richard Zeckhauser studied this back in 1988. They found people tend to stick with what's familiar, even when better options are right in front of them. Your brain doesn't actually ask if something is good. It only asks if it's familiar, which is why an unhealthy routine can still feel safer than a healthy change. Once you see it this way, that pull backward makes more sense. It isn't weakness. It's just a thermostat doing exactly what it was built to do. Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky studied something called loss aversion. Their research found that losing something hurts almost twice as much as gaining the same thing feels good. That imbalance changes how your brain looks at progress, the possible losses, wasted time, embarrassment, failure, get counted twice in your head. Meanwhile, comfort doesn't look like it's costing you anything. Not right now, anyway. So, in the moment, comfort almost always wins the math. It's part of why people stay in jobs that drain them, relationships that stopped growing, routines that stopped fitting. The small, certain comfort outweighs the big, uncertain reward. Your amygdala, the part of your brain built to spot threats, reacts to the idea of loss before you've even thought it through. It can hijack your planning before logic gets a say. But here's the strange part. The biggest loss, the slow fading of your own potential over the years, never sets off that alarm. It happens too slowly to notice. Some call this the invisible cost of staying still. It's the most expensive bill, and most people never realize they've been paying it. Dopamine isn't really the pleasure chemical people think it is. Neuroscientist Wolfram Schultz's research suggests it's more about anticipation, about motivation. Your brain releases it based on how much reward you expect, divided by how much effort it takes. Which means it naturally favors easy wins over hard ones. Scrolling your phone, grabbing a snack, watching one more episode. All of it delivers a quick hit for almost no effort. Your reward system starts expecting payoff without work. Author Anna Lembke writes about this in Dopamine Nation. She explains that constant cheap stimulation raises your baseline, so slower, harder rewards start to feel flat. Real progress, though, is delayed. It's uncertain. It takes effort. To your dopamine system, that combination looks like a bad bet. That's why planning a goal can feel more exciting than actually doing it. The fantasy pays out now. The real work only promises a payoff later. Every easy reward quietly resets what your brain considers worth it, which is how comfort, piece by piece, turns into paralysis. In his book The Power of Habit, Charles Duhigg describes a simple loop: a cue, a routine, and a reward. It quietly runs almost half of what you do each day. MIT researchers found that once a behavior becomes habitual, it shifts out of the decision-making part of your brain. It moves into a region built for automatic action. That's efficient, but it makes change harder. Your comfort habits have years of repetition backing them up. There's an old idea in neuroscience, based on Donald Hebb's work: neurons that fire together wire together. Every time you repeat a comfort behavior, that path gets stronger. So trying something new means sending a fresh, fragile signal down a brand new trail. Against that, a habit is basically a superhighway. Willpower alone rarely wins that fight. In Atomic Habits, James Clear argues the answer isn't more willpower, it's better design. Make the new behavior small enough that your brain doesn't even flag it as a threat. Here's the real takeaway: you don't rise to the level of your motivation. You fall to the level of your automatic systems. There's something deeper than energy or habit at play here. Your brain also protects your sense of self, the story you tell yourself about who you are. Psychologist Claude Steele studied this through what he called self-affirmation theory. People will bend facts, brush off feedback, even avoid opportunities just to keep that story intact. When progress asks you to become someone different, your brain can read that as a threat. It reacts almost like physical danger. Stanford psychologist Dweck found something similar with mindset. People with a fixed mindset often avoid challenges because failing would attack their identity, not just their results. That's part of why self-sabotage tends to show up right before a breakthrough. Success would mean updating who you are, and your brain isn't always ready to approve that. Sociologists sometimes call this the crab bucket effect. When you start outgrowing your old self, the people and habits around you can quietly try to pull you back. Real progress isn't only about doing new things. It's about grieving an old version of yourself. And your brain resists grief with everything it has. Here's the encouraging part. Neuroscientist Michael Merzenich's research on neuroplasticity shows your brain can rewire itself throughout your entire life. Comfort bias is a default, not a life sentence. Researcher B.J. Fogg found that shrinking a behavior down, making it almost too small to matter, can slip right past your brain's resistance. Psychologist Peter Gollwitzer studied something called implementation intentions. Simple if-then planning. Deciding your action ahead of time roughly doubles your chances of following through. Small doses of voluntary discomfort help too. Things like cold exposure or a hard conversation. Research on stress inoculation shows this widens your tolerance for the unfamiliar. You can also redesign your surroundings, so the behavior you want becomes the easiest option available. Let your brain's laziness finally work for you instead of against you. Harvard researcher Alison Wood Brooks found that simply relabeling anxiety as excitement can improve performance. The two feel almost identical in the body. And finally, track your progress. Psychologist Teresa Amabile found that seeing small wins is one of the most powerful motivators there is. It gives your brain proof that growth is worth the bet. If this shifted the way you see your own resistance, there's a lot more waiting for you here. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications. Every week, this channel breaks down the psychology quietly running your life, backed by real research, real books, and no fluff. Now, here's a small challenge. Pick one tiny action. Something so small, your brain won't even flag it as a threat. Do it in the next 10 minutes. Then drop a comment and share what you chose. Seeing what others commit to builds accountability for everyone here. Your comfort zone had its turn. This one's yours.